Hi, I'm Susan Waters from Exceeding Joy. Our scripture this week is James 4, verse 13 to 15, which says, "Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go to such and such a city, spend a year there, buy and sell and make a profit, whereas you do not know what will happen tomorrow. For what is your life? It is even a vapor that appears for a little time and then vanishes away. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we shall live and do this or that." Today we're going to be looking at the segment, Hold It Lightly. The first translation I read on Sunday, that segment says, "Instead you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we shall live and do this or that." And the last one, "It will be best to say, if it is the Lord's will and we live long enough, we hope to do this project or pursue that dream." We live in a spiritual war zone, and some live in a natural war zone on top of a spiritual war zone. And we have to learn to hold things lightly. We are God's soldiers, and we need to cling to Him in the good times and the bad times. We need to hang on to His promises, but hold it lightly as to how God brings that to pass in our lives. If we hold on too tight to our own dreams or the way we think they should happen, we run into trouble. In the book of Genesis, it tells the story of Abraham. Now, Abraham and Sarah were actually called Abram and Sarai at that time before they had their son Isaac. But God promised them a son. And they waited years, and they waited long past their childbearing years. And Sarai came up with a plan that Abraham agreed with. And that kind of sounds to me like Sarah didn't want to wait on God. She wanted to make it happen. And whatever Abraham agreed. So whether his problem was the son or his wife, I don't know, maybe both, but they made it happen, and Ishmael was born. And God said to Abraham, "I'll bless Ishmael, but he's not the promised son. He's not the son of promise that I made to you." And so they waited and they believed God again, and God did come through with a son, Isaac. And when Isaac was, I think he was around a teenager, God asked Abraham to sacrifice his only son, his only begotten son, because Ishmael was his son, but born from Hagar, Sarah's handmaiden. But so when he did this, Abraham took his son and the wood and went up the mountain, and he was going to sacrifice him. And I believe it's in Hebrews, it says that he believed God that he would raise him up from the dead. But before he actually took the knife to him, God told him to stop. See, God wanted to make sure that he was number one in Abraham's heart, because that is the way that when we place God first, we're positioned to receive from God, to be used by God, and it's the best plan for us. But it's so easy for us to get our eyes off of God and onto the promise, and then everything gets turned around. So I have two challenges for you today. One, make a list of the people and things that are important to you. And the second one by one, give each person or thing to God. Now, when you do this, it's not just words. You want to do it from your heart. I remember when my children were born, each one God told me to place on the altar, and it wasn't a physical altar, but I went through a grieving process, because it was like, I thought they were newborn babies. When I gave them to him, I didn't know if I would get them back. I didn't know if they were going to live or perhaps die. So I chose to give them over to God. But it was a difficult process. And years later, God asked me to do that with everything in my life. And I remember getting together with a girlfriend afterwards, and she said, "Wow, you don't look that great. You look like you just died or something." And I said, "Well, I kind of Kind of feel like it inside. And that's exactly what I went through. Death to the visions and the dreams that God gave me, death to the plans, death to what I thought. I gave it all over to God, and that's what He wants. He wants us to hold things lightly so that we don't take charge and make things happen, so that we allow Him to do what He wants to do. He's a good God and He loves us. He doesn't do that to torment us. He does that so that we can be positioned to receive all that He has for us. So bless you as you release everything and everyone to God today. We'll see you tomorrow.